Hey, everybody. Before we get into this next episode with Robby Lewis, make sure you check out attacklete.com. That is ATACLETE.com. Use the promo code One's Ready. Instead of piecemealing all of your equipment, your fins, your booties, your high volume masks and stuff like that, go to one stop shop with Attacklete. Get everything you need there. It's the same equipment that they use in the pipeline. So it's not like you're going to get used to something outside while you're training up for it in development. And then get something totally different in the pipeline. It's the same exact equipment. So when you learn how to clear your mask with a high volume mask from Attacklete, you're going to do the same exact thing, same exact procedures in the pipeline. So enjoy clearing your mask. Also, make sure you check out Eberly Stock. They have, or eberlystock.com. You know the website. You've been there tons of times. Our promo code is OR10. That's OR10. They've got great modular systems. They've got a lot of tech apparel, anything you need for law enforcement, military, hunting, whatever it is. It'll keep you warm. It'll keep you performance related, doing whatever you're doing. And then if you need to train for the pipeline, they've got great rucks for that. And really any kind of 3-day pack or just going out hiking, they've got you covered. So check them out, eberlystock.com, and promo codes OR10. And now onto this episode with Robby Lewis, who is the SOCOM small UAS or small unmanned aerial system instructor, and teach you guys all kinds of stuff about the little drones. All right, enjoy. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the One's Ready podcast. You're here in the team room, and today we've got Robby Lewis with us. And I want to kind of, because I don't want to shorthand you or shortchange you, short jokes and all that kind of stuff aside. So I know that you've got quite a bit of time in the Air Force as well. So I want to hand it over to you and say, one, welcome and appreciate you joining us. But two is tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what your background is. And then we'll get into what kind of the cool things that you're doing now.
Yeah. First and foremost, I appreciate, your time and setting up a time for us to sit down and chit chat and allowing me to tell my story. Cause I've been told it's pretty interesting. To me, it just seems like, a standard Tuesday. Right. But, so I've been in, over 20 years now. I started out in 2003. Actually, before that, I was delayed enlistment for the Marine Corps. And then I met my wonderful wife. We got married pretty quick out of high school, and then I switched up my enlistment to the Air Force. Probably one of the smarter things I've ever done, which is a very short list. But so I joined in 2003. I was a weapons loader. My first base was Minot, North Dakota. Yeah, I get that face a lot. In tech school, everybody's like, oh, I got Klein Brogel and Vokel and Bushel and Getty and Aviano. I'm like, oh man, I've got Minot. That's got to be in like Scandinavia. This is going to be awesome. North Dakota. My wife cried for like a week, right? So we get up there in September of 2003, and we don't leave again until June of 2009. So we spent quite a bit of time there. It was a great base. We had a great time. Everybody knows what happened in 2007, right? It's in the Air Force history book now. So not the best.
Well, I know what happened in 2007, but other people don't know. So what are you alluding to?
No, they can actually read about it. I think it's actually in the PDG now. I would have to double check, but I'm fairly certain the whole reason for Global Strike Command standing up and all that is actually in the PDG. So that's never some munitions were moved from Minot to Barksdale Air Force Base. And I think that was 2007. That might have been 2008. I'm not sure. It all runs together.
It's been a while, but that was a big deal when they accidentally move those nuclear stuff.
Yeah. Not the best time to be at Minot Air Force Base. So we left there. I was there till 2009. Then I went to Kunsan, Korea. I did a year over there. Before I left over there, I moved my family to Shaw because that was going to be my follow-on. So I get done with Korea. That was a really cool, great experience. And I get back to Shaw, and I realize, like, man, I'm never home, right? Like, I want to see my kids grow up. I'm always TDY somewhere. I'm going to cross train, and it's going to be great. So me being the dumb maintainer that I was, and I feel like I still am, I just start looking at SRB listings, right? So what's got the biggest bonus? Obviously,
Yeah.
there's PJ, CCT, TACP. I'm like, okay, well, I don't like to swim, so PJ's probably not going to be the best thing for me. I thought about combat control. I really thought about TAC-P, and then I see this one. It was like right below TAC-P. I think it was a one uniform 071 sensor operator, RPA sensor operator. I'm like, oh, well, that's cool.
Yep.
So I snagged that one up. I put in my cross training paperwork and uh, thinking I was going to be home all the time. And in all reality, even whenever I was home, I wasn't home. Whenever I was gone, I was really gone. And I did that from 2011 to 2016. We had some family stuff happen, some grandfathers pass away and stuff. So we're like, you know what? We're moving back home to beautiful Northwest Florida. I punched it like 15 years active duty, which is crazy. Not one of my smarter decisions, and that's a much longer list, right? So,
Oh wow. Are you the only disgruntled or not disgruntled, but you the only person that is upset about going guard?
no. I mean, maybe. I I I can't lie. I've had a great run of things. But yeah, so I left active duty in 2016. I got down here. I became a first sergeant for the 859th Special Operations Squadron, which was
Okay.
great. I like being a shirt. I can relate to people doing dumb things inconveniently. Like I've done many of those things myself. Um, so so there's that level of reciprocity there, right? Like I know what you're doing, dumb. Like you can't. I've been there. I wrote the book, right? Um, and then so in the reserve world, it's weird. You can serve in a bunch of different capacities, right? It's obviously geared towards somebody fulfilling a reserve commitment 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year if you're a traditional reservist, right? But there's also opportunities to supplement active duty manning where they're short at. So that's where I found myself on what's called an MPA day. And that's Title 10 active duty orders. And I knew about this little field just south of me here because I used to drag race out there at high school, right? I was like, there's got to be something going on out there. So after calling and talking, I ended up out there as like the scheduler registrar guy for the SOCOM SUAS schoolhouse, right? Small unmanned aerial system schoolhouse. It's great. There's 2 buildings. It's like the geriatric ward of the training squadron we're attached to. It's 5 old crusty GS guys, right? That just bicker like little schoolgirls. It's hilarious. But the impact that we make with those 5 guys and me and a major is pretty much unparalleled whenever you give like a cost benefit analysis, right? We train everybody from all the different special forces groups, obviously lots of AFSOC ST guys. We're trying to get spun into the TAC-P thing on the conventional side through ASOSs and ASOGs. Everybody in Naval Special Warfare Group 4. Obviously lots of other people. Literally everybody within SOCOM has the potential to come through our schoolhouse. So it's really great. And a lot of times it's just in time training or it's spin up for, a deployment where they're fixing to utilize these systems. So I've been out there for a while. Oh, great. Did I lose you?
No, you're here.
Okay. All right. My video locked up and you had like this look on your face. And I was like, oh no. So I've been
No.
out.
That's just my
That's
face.
just my face. So I've been out there for a while. Like I said, since 2017. And now I'm on what's called a voluntary limited period of active duty. And this is this horrible program that the Air Force has that has allowed me to serve on active duty for 3 years with without having to be a traditional reservist. It's going to put me like 270 days short of retirement. So I'm having to like try to extend it, and my waiver's actually up at the Pentagon right now. Hopefully it gets approved. I'm not real
Not real hopeful.
no. So I'm contingency planning now. That's why my page is Robby Lewis Realtor and all that kind of stuff. I've had some businesses and all that kind of stuff going on, just because I don't like working.
That'd be a real shame though if
working for people,
200 and you said, I think 286 days or something like that. Is that what you said? Short of, like, if they can't figure out a way to get you to that.
Yeah, if they can't figure that out, then I'll have to go back to my reserve unit as a traditional reservist and then come back on those MPA days, right? So there's a bunch of weird math, and like reservists don't even understand reserve math. It's like VA math. It's really, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. No, my brother's a guard guy, and it's the same kind of weird, like, hey, I'm
Title 32 versus Title 10
guard
versus AGR versus ART. Like, man, you're literally just making.
And then I'm a master sergeant, or I'm a technician. Like, it's just really weird.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's 20 years and 10 minutes or less. So.
Well, hopefully you get those last 200 something days, and that's no issue.
Yeah.
You had talked about, like, man, you've actually done quite a bit. So you were weapons loader for B-52s. And I think you also Vipers too, right?
Yep,
F-16s.
Yep, F-16s. Yep.
Then sensor operator.
Yep.
Were you primarily MQ1s or MQ9s?
So I was one of the first, like, 100, I think, one uniforms whenever they stood up the career field. So whenever it was still in like its infancy, I was like one of the first 10 classes through the basic sensor operator course. It was really just coming online whenever I cross trained to it. But yeah, I was all MQ1s. My unit in Missouri was actually transitioning to MQ9s as I was leaving. So I mean, it was good old days, bad old days, whatever. I guess it's a matter of perspective. Yeah. All the way through, the height of Helmand in 2013, and Condu's, and we were the first ones after ISIS in 2014, I think. Like, it was, business was booming, man. I always describe it as like it was the best worst job to have, right? So it was really great whenever it was great and everybody was having fun, and you're hunting bad guys. But the minute you're supporting, like a no shit TIC and or troops in contact, right? And you're hearing the radio calls and the JTAC's freaking out, and, everybody's panicking, and it's just a really, really bad day for everybody. Like, it sucked. It sucked bad. Right.
No, and that's the part of it that a lot of people don't get or don't think about or relate to, because you've got guys on the ground, and that's what you hear about a lot. You hear about the guys on the ground, right? And that's, I mean, especially in the world that I live in, because it's us. But you never really take into account the guys that are flying in the air, because you guys do everything that you possibly can. Everything, whether you're a sensor operator, an RPA pilot, F-16 driver, hog driver, whatever it is, like, you're doing everything that you possibly can to help the folks out on the ground. And because they're in a bad way, they're in a bad situation, and there's only so much you can do, especially with the information that you're given. And that's if everything, you actually have ordnance. I mean, because you could have, with you guys, you're, especially the MQ1s, you're limited on ordnance. So once that's gone, the best you can do is help provide situational awareness for other aircraft, situational awareness for the guys on the ground, comm relays and stuff like that. And it's very, very frustrating. And it puts you guys, the whole aviator community in a really difficult spot mentally, because, man, you're hearing everything, and especially for you guys with the big eye in the sky, you're seeing a lot of stuff. And man, you're helpless in a way. You know, it sucks.
Yeah, yeah, it pisses you off, and there's I believe personally that within the next probably 5 to 10 years, maybe you're going to see something very akin to like Gulf War syndrome and all that kind of stuff because the RPA community is pretty small. And or at least it was whenever I was there. Now I think they're up to 2 wings, 3 wings. Like just it's grown massively.
Yeah, there's a
But
big demand.
there is, and to add another component to that, yeah, you're supporting all these guys on the ground and they're having a bad day and all that, and then you get done with that situation and you unplug and you go home and eat spaghetti with the kids. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's tough, man. Like it's really really hard to unplug, and that's kind of what parlayed me into like back into woodworking and all that kind of stuff. I ran a woodworking business from 2018 to 2022. We actually just closed up shop, but I got back into that as a therapy, man, because I was going down a dark hole. I mean, it was rough
yeah,
some days, and you got to have some sort of coping mechanism. Like I really lucked out because I have my wife. She's great. She's been with me from the beginning of all this, and I had her to lean on. But I mean, there's a limit to that, given the information that we're dealing with and the situations we're dealing with, and where we're
yeah.
operating and all that kind of stuff. So I dove back into woodworking and that was my therapy for the longest time. And I turned it into a decent business, and then you know everything fell apart around that. But um, yeah, it definitely offers a unique perspective to things. I mean,
Oh yeah, and like I said, man, it's not me, blowing smoke up your ass. Having I've been a combat controller my entire career, so I'm coming up on 24 years, right?
yeah,
And I had a deployment downrange where I was the wing weapons officer for the F-16s, in Bagram, and it's usually what happens is there's a kind of seasoned patch that goes over there with the F-16s, and it's a fairly new crew. Your commander and DO and some of the guys are veterans, seasoned. They've been around a while, but then you get some brand new captains that had never seen troops in contact they'd never employed in real life, other than in training. And I remember sitting down with one of the guys because one of our CCTs, his JTACs, had gotten in a pretty good troops in contact, and he had gotten back and he had supported, and the Viper pilot had supported, and he's reviewing his tapes, and I'm over there debriefing with him, and like he was upset in a bad way because he's like, I can hear the guy screaming, I can hear the gunfire, like I can hear everything going on, and I ran out of bullets. Like I was Winchester. I had nothing, or I know he had employed, I want to say, I could be wrong. I thought he was Winchester, or maybe he was having difficulty because it's not just about being able to employ, it's being able to understand, like, okay, these are the enemy, these are the friendlies. Let me make sure I don't hit them. So it was something like that. He couldn't do everything that he wanted to, and he was really upset about it. And I'm like, hey man, like I get it, and I appreciate the fact that you're so passionate and so upset about it, but this is where we got to learn, and we got to move on. You can't let this cripple you. You can't let this just really affect you, because guess what? You're flying tomorrow too,
yeah,
and you
yeah,
may be supporting somebody else.
yeah,
Like, so, you got to learn from it. And that's a bit of everything. That's, for the guys on the ground too.
yeah,
It's just reality.
yeah. Absolutely. And I think my time doing that really really transitioned well to this circumstance that I'm in now with the small UAS schoolhouse and all that, because I can speak intelligently to the air side of contact situations. Like I understand 9 lines, maybe not as intimately
Yep.
as you, obviously, but I do understand 9 lines. I
Yeah, for
understand
sure.
close air support. I understand ISR and funnel navigation and target talk-ons and unit of measures and all this other kind of stuff. And it allows me to bring a different perspective to the schoolhouse to these guys, and I can say, hey, well, this ODA guy that you're talking to right now, the JTAG for the ODA, whoever this guy is going to be, he's looking at it from this perspective, right? And I've got a Sal T guy that works out there, an old retired Sal T guy. I've got a TAG P instructor, or he was a TAG P. Now he's a instructor out there. But we got some other retired sensor operators from AC 130 days and stuff. But and then we got like the cop, right, who just does cop things, right, whatever that means. But we've got a really unique group of guys out there, and the level of training that we can offer, whether it's a controller or even a pararescue doing, search operations. I just sat down for probably 45 minutes the other day and talked to a PJ out of, I want to say it was at the schoolhouse out of Kirkland, but he was wanting to come through one of our courses. And he's like, well, how can I use this? I'm like, well, if you have personal recovery in an open area, you can use a large fixed wing. If you're, looking at an urban area, you can use a quadcopter. If it's a closed structure like a parking garage, you can use this little Black Hornet thing. Like, there's all kinds of stuff. Like, and we just started kicking it back and forth. And I think him and a couple other guys from the schoolhouse are coming through. So that's awesome. I mean, we get to make an impact not only on current operations but future operations as well. So.
Yeah, and that's really important. So this is a SOCOM accredited program, a Special Operations Command accredited program. And what all are you guys teaching, and how long is the course?
Yeah, so we teach the RQ-20 Bravo, which is the Puma. So everything we teach right now currently is group 2 and below, so less than 55 pounds, right? So they're all small hand-launched, small unmanned aerial systems. We have the RQ-20. We have a quadcopter system coming online. We were using a company called PSI that was like mandated by SOCOM to create this Instanite Gen 4. Actually, they've had a couple different generations or iterations of it. And the company just recently had to close up shop due to manning and inflation and all that kind of stuff. So they couldn't sustain their operations, so they closed up shop. So AFSOC actually as a whole is going towards the Skydio X2. So that course is coming online. And then we have a 32-gram itty-bitty, teeny-weeny helicopter, the Black Hornet 3 made by FLIR. So, yep.
That thing's pretty cool.
It is. And it's more capable than you think it is. I wish the camera was maybe a little bit better, but that's just me being a imagery snob, right? But it's really capable. It's more capable than I thought it was. I mean, it can fly a click out like no problem. I mean, it's
little. I remember the first time seeing it. I was at the 22nd Special Tactics Squadron, and I'm in my office, and all of a sudden and it's fairly quiet. Now, when you get it indoors in a closed space, you can hear it quite a bit, but I couldn't hear it down the hallway.
Yeah.
And because I'm in my office, and then it comes into my office and swings, right in front of my face. I'm like, okay, well, this is pretty cool,
Yeah.
And then they, make it leave the office. And, this was a PJ flying it. He hadn't been to school or anything like that. It was just, it's very intuitive, and you can pick it up pretty easily. So it's cool.
It does take some getting used to. The controller is, we actually 3D printed replicas for the controller because there's so many different buttons, and the buttons sometimes have 3 or 4 different functions to them, right? So we actually made little 3D printed hand controllers that people can use in class to learn different button groupings and all that kind of stuff. And they're just not like clicking away, you know what I mean, on the simulator. So we do a lot of really, really cool stuff out there, and I'm really proud to be a part of it. It's not as rewarding as being a sensor operator as far as like making a direct impact. But knowing that you're making an impact long term and you're enabling all of these guys to do these awesome, badass things, like, it doesn't get much better than that, right? So
Well, that's what we talk about it. And you've said it as a senior NCO anyway, like you got to build your bench, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be me out there executing, you know, in 2025 or whenever the future happens, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be everybody that we are training now. So, that's why it's important for us to train.
Yeah, but damn
Aggressively
good and well
train.
you're going to want to be out there. You're going to
Well, of
want to be out
course.
there
Yeah.
so bad. It's I mean,
Yeah. I mean, that's just the way it is. But in reality,
yeah.
by that time, there's no way that they're going to release a chief to go out there and hack the mesh.
Yeah, yeah. But you're still going to have that drive. That drive is something that doesn't go away, and I think it's something that's really unique to the AFSOC mentality and the AFSOC mindset, right? Like you always have that drive to want to go do, and it's tough sometimes to hit the pause button and go, hey man, maybe I need to let somebody else go do this. Maybe I do need to build that bench. Maybe I need to, take all of this wisdom that I have and try to impart that on somebody else, right? So it's
Well, that's
that
part of the podcast. So
yeah, 100%, 100%. Whenever I heard you guys on Citizen the other day talking about it, I was like, man, this is awesome. What these guys are doing is phenomenal, and it's taking all these years of wisdom or experience that we have or y'all have, and imparting that on the next generation, so they don't make the same stupid mistakes that we do, or if they do, they make them better, right? At least, or
yeah.
different.
Maybe instead of the mistakes that I made at 100 miles an hour, maybe they make it at maybe they make it at 50 instead.
Maybe.
So,
Yeah.
So how long is is it platform dependent, the length of the course?
It is right now. So the idea, right, is to just be able to pick up a hand controller or a phone or whatever and utilize whatever asset you have, right? Unfortunately, technology isn't there yet. So right now we are still very platform specific. There's a couple of AFSOC and AFRL, or Air Force Research Laboratories projects going on to try to get us there, but we're not there yet. So our Puma course, the larger fixed wing aircraft, is 2 weeks long. And then we try to pair that so you'll go to like Puma, and then right you can do Skydio and then Black Hornet, right? So you're down here for a month. I know it's really rough being in Northwest Florida for, a month at a time, right? Like, but you're down here for a month and you walk away with 3 systems underneath your belt that you can take back to your unit and start doing that mission qualification training piece, right? So specifically to how the 22nd or the 23rd or, SEAL Team 4 or, 5th Special Forces Group utilizes their systems, right? All of that is mission specific because everybody uses it differently, right? So,
Well, now, and I know you're saying that the technology still has a ways to go, which is true, but I remember flying the Pointer and the Raven B back in the early 2000s, right? Yeah, I know. And we were thinking like, this is pretty cool. It's cumbersome. Like it's not ideal, but okay, this is where we got to go. And we understood that, hey, the technology is not there, but the problem was that we needed organic ISR, some kind of organic, because we couldn't rely on MQ1s or MQ9s or AC-130s or whatever to be there, because you're talking about a high demand, low density capability being something with a pod or something with eyes. So you've got to be able to organically source that eye in the sky. And that's where the whole UAVs or the SUASs came from, or I'm sorry, I'm trying not to use acronyms, but UAV is unmanned aerial vehicle and SUAS is small unmanned aerial system.
Yeah.
Right? System?
Yeah.
So we needed a way to organically source any kind of ISR. So that's where these came from. And now the technology from now, just the way to control those things and how they fly and how they're, it's HD on the cameras on a lot of them compared to the early 2000s with the Pointer is a big deal. And
they've come a really, really long way. And as far as like disseminating that information, right? So we like to phrase what you're talking about as organic inter-team ISR, right? So you have
Okay.
an ODA, you have, an SR team outside, they're doing low observable recon operations, whatever. They launch a Puma, they're doing ISR on themselves, their own overwatch, organic overwatch, right? We're getting really good about populating what we're seeing throughout the rest of the team through like ATAC and stuff like that. That's come a really, really
Yeah.
long way. But as far as like actually controlling the aircraft, I mean, you're still using the Sega Genesis or Sega Game Gear style controller from the Raven, right? I mean, for the Puma,
Yeah.
like it's still this big clunky thing. Um, Only because there's not a better option out there yet, right? There's quite a few in works, and like the Skydio is the same thing. It uses this crazy big controller. Well, until we can figure out what that node is to make everything work off of, like you would call it like a debrief focal point, right? Like the nexus of everything, right? So what is this so we can control that, right?
Yes. Yep.
And until we find out what that is, we're going to be operating kind of where we're at least until hopefully I retire, right? I mean, hopefully that happens, but at least for a while, which does complicate things, right? Because everybody would love to just like, grab a Black Hornet and throw it up and pull out their, phone or their, flip down their EUD and just tap some
Yeah.
buttons. But it's just not there. They're trying. But a lot of times we get in our own way.
Yes, we do.
From the DoD side of things, we don't allow things to progress as fast as they should or as quick as they should. I was telling my boss the other day that we should just take a couple 19, 20-year-old fresh out of the pipeline TAC-P, PJ, whatever SR flavor guy, and just hand them something and just go, hey, do this, right?
Yeah.
Here's a Skydio. Go show me something amazing, right? And it's either going to be really, really good or really, really bad. But either way, you're going to learn, right? You're probably going to do something to plus up your TTPs, your techniques, tactics, and procedures, right? And you're going to learn something. Hopefully, it's on the better side of things. But we need that young blood. We need these guys coming off the bench to get amped about it, right? To really push the limits of what we can do with these systems and what we can do as a DoD as far as like capabilities that they want. We don't make capabilities at my schoolhouse, right? We're all demand signal driven, right? We get the request from the end user. The end user sends it to headquarters AFSOC. Headquarters AFSOC says, "Hey, you need to train this many Puma seats." Okay.
Yeah.
Right now, there's avenues to influence, right? So you have different working groups throughout AFSOC and throughout SOCOM. I'm actually going down to Tampa here in like 2 weeks to the
Oh, it's
SOCOM.
terrible.
Yeah, real bad. But there's a SOCOM SWAS working group that I've been a part of. There's an AFSOC SWAS working group now. So we're trying to push the envelope of what we can do, what our capabilities are, and hopefully make things move a little bit quicker so we can get to that end state of that futuristic small unmanned aerial system or aircraft system.
Yeah.
So
Well, let me ask you then, because you're living this world and you're deep in this world, but we've got special reconnaissance, we've got combat controllers, we've got PJs, TAC-P, and they all do some form of recce, specifically SR and CCT. How do you guys educate or kind of, what are ways that they can use these small UASs, like in missions or in training? Like, because you can I can say it, but you guys are at the forefront of it, so you're going to know better than me.
Yeah. So, and speaking specifically to AFSOC, right? Because
Right.
USASOC and NSW use them their own different ways, with boats and all that cool fun stuff. But speaking specifically to AFSOC, we've had a lot of SR guys come through. Honestly, the SWAS focus has been between CCT and SR, right? CCT is typically looking at airfield surveys. Hey, can we use this runway? Is this, a suitable site for landing? Is, identifying threats within the area, all that kind of stuff. And honestly, right now they're going outside of the Air Force to get those systems that they need because the ones that we train to don't have quite that capability, right? You're looking at EB Tax, and that's taught at a company up in Southern Pines called Tough Stump. Really good guys,
Yep.
um, but typically they're using those survey type platforms. We do have one system. It's called the R80 Skyraider that I think would be hugely beneficial to that. CE actually uses it for the RADAS program, Rapid Airfield Damage Assessment System program. So I think that could be tailored into the CCT world a little bit, but I don't make those decisions, obviously. And then on the SR side of things, working with one of the guys down at headquarters AFSOC, we actually got both rotary and fixed wing small UAS written into the Career Field Education Training Plan, CFETPs, for the 5-level awarding career progression for SR guys. So as they're coming through the STTS pipeline now, they're actually stopping by our schoolhouse and getting Puma training real quick. Or, if they're up at the 352nd, they typically get spun up on a rotary wing, but now we're actually leaning more towards combining both those efforts down at Choctaw and teaching up STTS specific course. Now operationally, the biggest way that I've seen it utilized is low observable, and again, this was years ago, and Afghanistan. We had guys from the 17th come down, and they were talking about utilizing them. They're in full indige garb and everything, and they're driving around in a jingle van, and they have a Puma overhead that's doing their own overwatch because
Yep.
ISR wasn't available, right? Like
Right.
that's huge, and that gives them a capability that they wouldn't otherwise have. I've talked to some TACPs and some JTAC qualified CCTs about using the Puma for talking on, like, having a strike capability where they can, use the Switchblade. And because they're a family of systems, they work together. They're all AeroVironment products.
Yeah.
So the Puma can actually pipe the 10-digit grid from its center field of view to Switchblade, and you can launch from that, and that gives you a miniature strike capability. So in training, I'm not sure if they're being utilized a lot in, FMPs or any of that kind of stuff. I'm not sure, but I know overseas they're being utilized quite a bit. So
Oh yeah.
hope that answered your question.
No, it does. Excuse me. Yeah, and that's kind of what I was talking about in terms of it being high demand, low density asset with other sensors. So we'll use it for organic Overwatch, organic ISR. I think they're probably, and I'm familiar with the tough stump dudes because a lot of them are prior controllers, my friends, whatever. But I mean we're talking about incredibly capable systems that they have in terms of, I mean, we're talking like, I can't remember what the actual error rate is, but I want to say it's within 1 centimeter accuracy that they're surveying, which to me is still just insane. But I think there's, when we start talking about, the Kirtland, like from a training aspect, I see it as, you can conduct full mission profiles. You don't necessarily have to have RPAs overhead or remotely piloted aircraft overhead with pilots and all that kind of stuff. You could just have instructors providing that kind of overwatch and playing that role. But at the same time, I got to imagine the Black Hornet is capable of confined structure searches and to a limited degree. And I know there's other companies out there that are focusing on that in terms of the payload that they have as a sensor. Whether it's able to, I know X-ray is not the right terminology, but it being able to kind of see through one wall, or even using it as a comm node, a communications node, where you can use, you can throw up a bird for a couple of hours to just kind of loiter, and using it as a comm relay, because, me on the ground at 0 feet elevation versus something that's at 1,000 feet, just being able to bounce that up to them, and then that bird automatically relay it to somebody who's 60 miles away. That's a big capability.
Oh, it's huge, and radio signals are still a theory, right? Like
Right.
radio theory. So it's all a guess on what's actually going to work. I know Lockheed had made a tethered solution where you can actually launch it and it stays, right around a power box, and it shoots, I think, 150 feet up in the air, and it has a Harris relay package and all that kind of stuff on it. So you could use it as, persistent ISR, like a mini PGSS, or a relay node. And there are options for other aircraft to utilize different payloads. So you could use a relay package. You could, get into all the different ints, right? And
Right.
really track down things. But and yeah, a big problem is, for a long time, ST was divested of small UAS, and I'm not that happened before my time, right? I'm not sure what happened, but I know
Cost.
there's a cost.
I mean, even now, it is an extremely expensive program.
100%, 100%, and I know there was some paperwork issues. Like, again, we got in our own way. We tripped over our own feet, and we made it way too complicated to utilize these systems, which is completely asinine, right? Like, why are we doing this to ourselves?
Yep.
And we've since streamlined everything, and I think as a whole we're moving in the right direction. But for that period of time, we missed out on a lot of vital feedback that we could have to develop these TTPs, R3-1, R3-3, all this kind of stuff, to be a lot further ahead than what we are now. But we missed out on that huge window of information, right? So now we're trying to play catch up, and we're working that too. I'm paired with a couple other guys that are, trying to get those TTPs rewritten and those 3-1s updated, that, hey, this is how we're really utilizing this on a regular basis, right? So
no, that's all valid. And so I want to hit one more thing before we kind of wrap up, but you had mentioned integration into STTS, which I think is a really good thing, because if you can go ahead and integrate it into kind of part of the pipeline, instead of sending somebody to the teams, and then, because it may or may not be a priority for that team to send somebody, which usually it is, because, hey, it's all about, once you get to the team, it's all about like training, deploy, training, deploy. So, like, is that a solid thing now? Are you guys, no kidding, integrated into STTS now?
We are for the Puma course.
Okay.
Now we're doing a combination course that is specific to STTS. Nobody else is going through it, and that's mainly because of time constraints, right? These are going to be longer class days. You may have a weekend or something thrown in there. Like, people come down here and they want to relax. They want to, go through this course and have fun and all that kind of stuff. They don't want to be, working 12 or 14 hours a day, right? So the STTS guys, they don't mind, because they're in school, right? This is your life. This is what you're going to do. But we're moving to this combination course, hopefully in the next couple months. and we've teamed up with all the guys down there. I mean, I know all them pretty well, but it would alleviate this stovepipe that they have whenever they get back to the teams. You know, maybe they didn't go through the rotary wing course at the 352nd, but they came through the STTS, so they get back to their unit and they're like, hey, I got to progress in my career field. Like, according to my CFETPs, I need to get signed off.
Yeah.
I need to be a 5 level. Like, I've got a guy coming down here next week. He's like, man, I've got to get signed off on my CFETPs. Can you get me through the class? Absolutely. Like, we'll bump people, we'll move people to the best that I can, right? Like,
Yeah.
But he's coming down because he has to get that box checked. I mean, it's becoming a requirement that I think is needed, right? Because you do have these specific career fields that are very, very ISR heavy that, you know, really do rely on this capability. And, you know, they big AFSOC or big headquarters Air Force saw that as a need and added that to those CFETPs, right? So,
Yeah.
I think we're going in the right direction. I think we've got some more bumps and bruises and learning curves and all that kind of stuff heading our way, but that's just the nature of it, right? Like, you try something, you fail, you try something else. That's just what we do. So
that's exactly what we do. Well, Robby, before we wrap it up, you have a long career that has a bunch of different aspects to it. And one of the things that we kind of try and, if we remember, usually we do a good job of it. We ask, you know, somebody's advice, because our demographic is, you know, 15 to 35-year-olds that are wanting to join, mostly join Aspect Ward. There are other folks that, you know, want to join the Air Force or Rangers or SEALs or whatever it is. So, you know, with your kind of colorful career of all these different aspects, right? I mean, because like you've hit, like I'm looking at it because I wrote it all down. Like, you've hit a lot of different things. So what would be a piece of advice for those that are wanting to join the Air Force, or just in general, after your time of hitting all these different things? And I know I put you on the spot because I didn't tell you that I would do this.
No. And that's good. I like that, because now I'll actually have like a genuine made up answer that I'm having to come up with on the spot. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to push limits. Don't be afraid to push yourself and push your leadership and your command structure to grow, because stagnation is not going to help anybody, right? If you see something that needs to change, try to change it. We've all heard that analogy of somebody should do something.
Somebody.
You're somebody, dummy. Like, look in the mirror. You're somebody. Do something. Don't be scared to do something. Don't be scared to try. Don't be scared to fail, because, you know, I tell my kids all the time, and they're well within this demographic, right? I've got one kid looking to go. If you screw up something, you got two options. It can be a mistake or it can be a lesson, right? The only difference is you learn from a mistake, or you learn from a lesson, right? Like, mistakes is something you don't learn from. If you learn from a mistake, it's not a mistake anymore. It's a lesson. So don't be scared to learn lessons. Don't be scared to push the envelope. Don't be scared of change. Like, embrace these things, because that's what's going to make us and the Air Force and, you know, AFSOC and everything better, is young men and women that are willing to push the envelope and try outside of the box thinking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And for an organic and natural response, that's about as good as they come. So awesome.
I've done I've done a couple public speaking things, so people put me on the spot all the time. It's like a fun game people have. So
yeah, you kind of, as you go along in your career, you kind of get put on the spot quite a few times, and then all of a sudden you just gotta come up with it. And a lot of times those are the best. That's the best response. So no, we dig it.
100%, buddy. I appreciate y'all having me on, man. And if anybody would like to reach out to me, it's on the military side, it's robert.lewis.25@us.af.mil. I will try to answer all those, but I am a pretty busy guy, and I will get to them as quick as I can. If any of the guys listening are interested opening training, go through your UTM and your STS. Talk to your training manager, and we can definitely see about making that happen. So,
yeah, awesome. Well, Robby, appreciate everything that you've done for the Air Force, for our country, and especially training the next generation of aspect war peeps. So we definitely appreciate it. And for everybody out there, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave us a review, because we haven't gotten a review in a while. So we appreciate you joining us. Thanks a lot. Later.
Appreciate it, buddy. Thank you.